Hey, Stacey David here, and this is the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals since 1919. That's right, over 100 years building tools and still going strong. If you need tools, check them out. You won't be disappointed. All right, let's get rolling. All right, today we're going to talk about one of the most important things that you can do when you're a gearhead. It's something that you have to know how to do, and you have to know how to do it properly. And I'm talking about how to answer an ad when you're looking to buy something. Now, I know that seems like that would be very simple, but it's not. There's a lot that's going on here, and the problem that a lot of gearheads run into is that they sit there and they watch American Pickers and they watch, Pawn Stars, and they think they've got these negotiating tools and these abilities. And it's not that simple. It's something where you have to think on your feet and you have to kind of be on guard all the time to get the information that you're after is the key. And keep in mind, anytime that you're answering an ad, whether it be for a car or for parts or whatever, your goal is to get as much honest information as possible so you can make a wise choice. That's the goal. Not to rip somebody off, not to get a smoking deal, all that kind of thing. That's another person. And we'll deal with that as we get on down into this. But you don't want to be that person. You want to get something for a good price. And the way to do that is to get as much honest information as possible, so you can make a wise decision. So that's the goal. So with that in mind, let's get into, how to answer an ad, whether it's on Facebook or eBay or whatever. And I'm talking about an ad where you either are talking to the person on the phone or you have answered an ad and now you're out looking at the vehicle or the product. And I've got like 5 steps here that would really help people do this that have never done it before. And it would be a good reminder for those that maybe have been watching some of those reality shows and have gotten a little cockeyed in their approach. The first thing is to know what you're looking for. Now, I know that seems really obvious, but let me explain what I'm talking about. Say you've just been sitting there watching the Mecum auction or the Barrett-Jackson auction on TV, and you see a Volkswagen bus go for $80,000. So immediately you think, oh, there's money in a Volkswagen bus. So you jump on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and you're looking for Volkswagen buses. And you find a couple and you start calling the guy and talking about something you have no idea about a Volkswagen bus. And the poor guy trying to sell it, he's basically talking to an idiot because you don't know what you're talking about. So before you start jumping into something, you need to do a little research so you understand the vehicle or the product that you're looking for. You want to know its secrets, its idiosyncrasies, its pros, its cons, its value, not just in a hype sense, but in just the general sense. Do people want them? Or was it just a flash in the pan? You can't trust a lot of that stuff you see on those auction shows. You got to take that for a grain of salt. So you truly have to understand, what there is about this vehicle. So if it's Volkswagen buses you're interested in, do a little research, find out what the good years were, find out what the ones that are the most desirable, find out the lemons, because there's always those, find out which ones to stay away from, what motors to stay away from. Pack yourself with some knowledge, because if you don't, you're going to end up getting a deal of somebody dumping something that they don't want. Now, that also goes with if you're looking at objects, like a motor. If a guy says, hey, this is a small block Chevy, it's got double hump heads. Well, if you don't know what double hump heads are, he could be speaking Swahili, And if you don't understand what you're looking for, you're going to get taken. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I was looking for a top loader 4-speed to put in a Ford project. And, the top loader 4-speeds were high dollar and hard to find, so I was always looking for them. And I answered an ad on a top loader 4-speed, and I went out, I looked at it, And the guy, and this is something we'll get into. I was reading his body language and stuff, and I could tell he was a little bit of a shyster. He's talking a little too much and, giving me all the cliches like, oh, this is the transmission that everybody loves. This is the one. You can slam these things. He was trying a bit too hard. I could tell he wasn't a real gearhead. So I'm kind of putting that in the back of my head. So I looked it over. I looked at the splines and I looked at everything. And then I said, can I take the inspection cover off? Because I don't buy those transmissions without doing this. And he was like, sure, go ahead. I had my wrenches there, and I pulled the inspection cover off the top. I looked down inside of there, and I started pulling out pieces of broken teeth the size of my thumbnail out of the bottom of that case. And this guy, you talk about changing a tune, man. He didn't just change tunes, he took a break. Oh, man, he was backing up like crazy. Oh, I don't know. It's just an old transmission. I just don't know anything about it. Whereas just a few minutes before, he was singing the virtues of this thing. And he just didn't know. He was just looking to sell it. He obviously had never had the cover off before. But I looked in there. I knew what I was looking for. And I was like, this is trash. I don't want this. Unless, I'll give you $50 for it as just something to rebuild. And he declined to do that because he was going to wait for the next person to come along that wouldn't take the inspection cover off. So you got to watch out for that kind of stuff. But the big thing here is to know what you're looking for. That's the first thing. The second thing is to ask the right questions. You can get out there and get in talking with somebody, and you can waste a lot of time just talking about general stuff. But somewhere along the line, you got to get the right questions in there. So once again, the goal, get as much honest information as you can so you can make a wise decision. Some of the questions: ownership. How long has this person owned this thing? If he's just had it for a short period of time, he's probably a flipper. He probably got into something, got in upside down maybe, or bought something that's above his head, or found a surprise that he doesn't want to deal with, so he's trying to pass that on to you. If he hasn't owned it real long, be wary. Doesn't mean it's bad, but just be wary. If he's had it for a long time, ask the family history, find out what kind of ownership is involved with it. Also, ask about damage or known problems. And these are things that can come up in a conversation. Hey, have you had any problems with it? Does it run? Does it start? If you're looking at a motor, it's like, when's the last time this thing has run? How did it run? What was the oil pressure? Those kind of things, those legitimate questions that give you some information. If he can't answer those, then he doesn't know a lot about it. So you have to factor that in to your final offer on what you're going to do. Because remember, all of these questions are leading you into what you're going to offer for this product. Another one of the questions is, what kind of previous use did it have? Was it a race car? Was it a off-roader? Was it a toy? Did it sit in the garage? Did grandma drive it? Did who used it? Did a daughter use it? Was the oil never changed? Try to find out these things. And another good question is the reason for selling it. Just ask the guy, hey, why are you getting rid of this? This is really cool. And you'll be surprised what they'll tell you. I don't use it anymore. Or, it's got too much power for me. Or, it developed a knock in the rear end. See, you're getting so valuable information with these kind of questions, and they don't even realize that they're giving you things you need to hear. And, of course, one of the other questions is, what's the asking price? That's always good to have him tell you that. Ask them what the asking price is. Because an asking price and the actual selling price are usually two different things. Now, if they come back and say, well, I'm firm at $800, well, that pretty much means that's it. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then the last question that I like to kind of throw in there is, are there other people interested? What kind of calls have you been getting on it? Because they'll usually tell you, hey, I got 3 calls on this today, or there's 4 people coming to look at it this afternoon. That is invaluable information for you to know on what kind of timeline you've got to make this deal. If you got a bunch of people standing behind you, this is probably a pretty good deal. So that's all part of you getting the right information. Okay, after the right questions, the third thing, this is my favorite, is don't be a dick. Be friendly and let the person talk. Now, that's all part of the same thing. And what that means is don't be a jerk. Let them reveal things. If you sit there and let the person talk, they will tell you so many things about that product or that vehicle, and you can just sit there and let them give you that information. What you don't want to do is point out really obvious flaws or start being derogatory. In other words, if there's crappy welds on it that the guy did, then don't walk up and go, oh, what, these sucky welds, who did that? Well, then you've put the guy on the defensive. So he's going to go, well, I did that. You know, you're a jerk. So there you go. Don't be a dick. Don't be doing that. Listen, anytime that you go out there and you make a person get defensive, you're not going to get a good deal. You have become an adversary to the person as opposed to a friend. So keep that in mind, and let the person kind of tell you. You'll be surprised, like I said before, some of the things they will reveal to you about the vehicle. A lot of times I've had people actually negotiate with themselves on price right there in front of you. Sometimes they'll go, oh, yeah, I jumped a ditch with that. I'll tell you what, I'll take $200 off for that. And you didn't even do it. You didn't even negotiate it. They're cutting themselves down because they realize, some of the things they're seeing. And then number 4, negotiate the price or terms. Now, one of the things that I always like to talk about, and this is completely against what you usually see on some of those reality shows, don't go for the kill, just go for the deal. There's a big difference there. If you go in there and you try to undercut somebody so much so you're going to turn and flip it and make a lot of money off it, that's the kill. You're looking to kill somebody. And a lot of times that will offend the seller, and he'll just tell you to take a hike. What you want to do is just get a deal on it. And that goes back to, number 1, knowing what you're looking for. That's how you'll know you're getting a deal. So these things all kind of work together. And another big thing on that is respect the seller. If he tells you his bottom dollar is $800, that's his bottom dollar. There is nothing worse than a guy coming in going, hey, what's your bottom dollar? And you'll say $800. He'll go, I'll give you $5. That's just an insult. If they asked your bottom dollar and you gave it, then that's the bottom dollar. And that's something that you see happen all the time on the shows. And it's like, listen, when a guy gives you that bottom dollar, respect him on that. And a lot of times, once again, if you do, sometimes they'll renegotiate themselves. I had a guy the other day. I was looking at something. He was asking $1,500 for it. And it said in the ad, $1,500 firm, which means bottom dollar. Okay. So I went out there and I was looking things over and I was just asking questions. And then I finally said, so what's your price on this? Are you at firm at $1,500? He goes, he said, I'll take $1,000 for it. He knocked $500 off right there, and which was pretty much what I would have offered him for it. So I didn't have to go through all of that. He negotiated his own thing down. But once again, I knew what I was looking for. I knew what I was willing to spend for it. And if he was firm at $1,500, I wasn't going to take it. And I was willing to walk away from it at that because I had done my research on that. That's number 4. And then number 5 is the biggie. If it's a deal, jump on it. Don't wait. Because if you wait, it's going to be gone. Listen, I've done it myself. I have worked out a deal, negotiated something, and you're like, let me think about it. And you got those other people coming in, and 2 hours later, it's gone. And then you really screwed up. Once again, this goes back to the other things we talked about. Knowing what you're looking for. When it's a deal, negotiating the price. When it's a deal, you need to make that decision. You can't just goof off. And this is where I'm going to bring some other stuff in. If you've gone through all of this negotiating with somebody, and you get to a price, and you're at number 5, and you don't have the money, well, let me direct you back to number 3. Don't be a dick. Because if you don't have the money, don't waste people's time. Don't do that. Don't be that person. Listen, if you're serious about it, go after it. But if you're just shopping or you're just looking, Don't waste somebody's time cluttering them up with a bunch of questions, going out to see it, negotiating down a deal. Because as you know, if you've ever sold something, when you negotiate down a deal, it's pretty much over. And I've had guys renege on stuff like that before, and it's not pleasant. It's almost like they lied to you. So don't do that. If you don't have a way to transport it, if you didn't get permission from your wife, if you didn't do that stuff, once again, I direct you back to number 3. Don't be that person. Don't be a jerk. Just make sure that before you get in this game, make sure that you're a player. If you're just shopping, you put an end to that right on that first conversation on the phone. And I've done that many times. I'm like, you get some basic information about it before you go out and look at it. And you're saying, listen, I'm just kind of looking around. I'm interested in this. I'm not sure this is what I'm looking for. I appreciate your time. There's nothing wrong with that, because you haven't wasted a lot of time. But man, when you go out and go through all the negotiations, that's a whole different animal. Hopefully this will give you guys some help when you're getting out there and doing some of this. This is not rocket science. It's basically just being respectful to people and knowing that the person selling wants to get the best deal they can. And of course, you as a buyer want to get the best deal you can, and just working together with another gearhead. And it's a lot of fun. When gearheads get together, it isn't long until the subject of tools comes up. Because tools are what make all this possible. You guys know that. And car guys and girls are passionate about tools. What's good and what is bad. And that is one thing that I have to give Cornwell a lot of credit for. They'll listen to what the pros are saying about their tools and constantly make changes to build them better. That's why they have new screwdriver handles and ratchets and all kinds of other stuff coming out all the time. It's not just to get your money, which a lot of people think. It's the never-ending quest to build a better tool. Because Cornwell knows that if you're not working and getting paid, they're not getting paid. That's why they're America's oldest tool company and still going strong. Check them out. All right, this next question comes from Greg. Greg says, hey, Stacey, if you were building a 68 Firebird, well, first of all, I would like to be building a 68 Firebird. But he says, if you were building one and you wanted wider tires on a 4-link rear suspension, who would you use? He says, I see Detroit Speed has a very good weld-in setup, but it's almost twice the money. And then he says, Ride Tech has a bolt-in setup for half the money, but it doesn't impress me as much. Which way would you go? Well, I tell you what, Greg, good question. The question has to come back to you, though. How do you plan on using this car? And be honest here, because everybody wants the real nice, cool stuff. But if this is a daily driver or just, a mess around on the weekend kind of thing, man, you get what you pay for. I mean, Detroit Speed makes a great product. So does Ride Tech. There's Schwartz Performance. It makes a great chassis. There's TCI, there's Heights. There's a lot of people that are building performance suspension for these old muscle cars. So there's a lot of options out there, and they all make a good product. The big thing is, this isn't just about cost here. This is really more how you intend to use the car. And for example, if you're just going to drive this thing around and enjoy it and smoke the tires once in a while, then I'd go the cheaper route. I'd do the bolt-in stuff, and if it gets the stance that you're after, you're good to go. However, if you're going to take this thing out and run it on some road courses, and you want this thing to really handle, and you might want to add more power and maybe get into the Optimus series or SCCA racing or something, man, go the good stuff. Because that's the price difference. You're looking at like the Detroit Speed stuff. This is road course style stuff. And same thing with the Schwartz Performance and some of these other guys. So, do some research on the company. Make sure that you like the stance and you like the performance that you're going to be getting. And then make sure that the price matches up with the performance you're getting. Some of these guys will build a suspension that's really nice looking, a lot of billet, a lot of that kind of stuff, but it's not the high performance suspension that you want. It's more of a looks thing, show car stuff. And if that's what you're into, then that's the company you need to go with. But you just need to really decide how you're going to use this vehicle and what is going to be the price that you're willing to pay. Because each one has its place. Each one has its pros and cons. So that's what I would do. For me, because you asked me what I would do, I'm a race car guy. So I always build things to be more road course worthy, which means I usually put the more expensive suspensions in there. And that comes not only at a cost there, but a lot of times your ride height becomes an issue, your tire choices, your brakes that you're going to be using. Those are all things that you have to take into consideration as well. Man, I'd flare this thing out, man. Put some big old fat meats on that thing. Another thing that people need to think about, going back to the question that Greg had asked, when it comes to a fabricated or weld-in style suspension as opposed to a bolt-in style. Now, I know some people turn their nose up and go, well, that's bolt-in stuff. Well, the bolt-in stuff is some pretty nice stuff, and it can hit a price point and a use that is really good. On the other hand, the fabricated weld-in stuff is the hardcore, impressive racing style things, but that comes at a cost as well. First of all, the cost is you need to know how to do it, and you need to be able to do the work, and then, of course, it's expensive. For example, I mentioned Schwartz Performance. Jeff Schwartz makes some great replacement chassis, and you basically cut the bottom out of your car and drop it down on there and, graft it onto this modern chassis. It's a really nice setup, but it is labor intensive. And so you need to be able to do it. And here's the thing with this kind of stuff, if you're not a certified welder, then you don't need to be welding this stuff. This is not the place to learn. In other words, you need to take some classes. You need to be good when you're working on chassis components and frames and bodies and things like that can kill you. You need to be a good welder. And if you're not, then you need to put everything together and then go down to somebody that can do it for you. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at these kind of projects. Keep that in mind when you guys are looking at some of this bolt-on versus weld-in versus fabrication on these resto mods and these muscle cars. Make sure you're fitting your skill level to what you want the car to be. All right, that wraps it up for us today. Make sure that you check out the Gears TV website. We got all kinds of cool stuff there. We got a couple new die casts coming out. Got some books coming out. We have all kinds of things going on. But the most important thing is get out there and turn some wrenches yourself. Get a project. If you don't have one, start working on it. And if you don't have tools, check out Cornwell. They can help you out there.